I did want to dive into the book.
Yeah,
As you can see, I've written a ton of notes. That's not even
I know. Lovely to read.
have on my post-its. I loved that it really fills a hole as well in the market. People often ask for recommendations. What can I read that might give me a sense of what ISTDP is like? Or not even from a patient perspective, but people in my life that just want to understand what kind of therapy I do, that
Yeah.
aren't psychologists. And there's nothing there. There's really not a lot there. So I loved it from that perspective, but I also just love the vulnerability that you have
Thank
brought to it, and your honesty, and having the therapist monologue and experience involved along the way. So key. And I think for anyone, but also when you're learning ISTDP, to just see that very human experience of the therapist is normalizing.
Well, I'm so glad
Yeah.
to hear that. Those were really my two missions.
Okay.
The first mission was to fill a hole, and I was tired of, clients being like, can I read more about this? All you can recommend to them are books for clinicians or things that don't go too much into detail about how the work is actually done.
Yes.
And so I was very excited to fill that hole. And then the we-ness of it all was very important to me.
Mm.
Because I mentioned this in my introduction, but yeah, I wrote a totally different book at first, and it was just me,
Mm.
and it was protective and closed off, and that gave birth to this book and saying, okay, there's no hiding here, and in order to write this and truly not hide, I must reveal myself also to me,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
ended up being one of the most healing and horrible and fulfilling experiences of my life so far.
Yeah. As are the healing experiences there.
Yes, as is any good healing experience.
Yeah.
Eh,
How was that process of deciding to open up more and to rewrite?
uh, I still can easily flash back in my mind to decision point moments where I realized what I would have to do, or not have to do, but like
Mm.
self said you have to do, and therefore I must listen to self. But it was, I've mentioned this a lot of times, but it's because it really sticks out. I remember the moment I realized I'm going to have to put truly personal stuff in here, not just medically personal stuff, but like truly personal stuff. And I just started sweating, and I remember I just like grabbed a bunch of tissues and just started shoving them under my armpits. And then I just wrote with tissues stuck underneath my armpits for a very large portion of the book. So it was exciting. It was mostly terrifying. And in fact, that the decision to reveal brought up the next batch of issues I needed to face. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why it was so anxiety inducing.
Yeah. That's I guess that's what I was imagining, is that it's not like you'd had all this revelation and then decided to write about it, but actually in the process of writing about it, it pushes you further into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even as you get towards the end of the book, you realize that I start writing about writing the book.
Right.
So the book kind of eats itself,
Yeah.
right, in that process. So when I started the book, I didn't have the ending or know the ending because it was not yet known to me.
Well, that's the best kind of book. I think any writer will say that. The not knowing where it's going.
Yeah, really not. really,
Yeah.
really not. Yeah.
It's a bit like an ISTDP therapy. We might have some sense of where it's going.
That's
But
so true.
yeah, having the surprise, always being ready for the surprise.
That's so true. I had never made that parallel, but you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
just you've had patients, I'm sure, say the same thing. I never know where these sessions are going to go.
Yeah.
It's like,
Neither
that's
do
what
we.
happens. Yeah, neither do we. And that's what happens when we listen
Yeah.
to the unconscious as much as we can.
Well, actually, maybe that leads on to because I had a list of questions here, and rather than go in order, that probably naturally leads on to uh, this idea, I guess. There's so many different ways that we can talk about it, but that the real, like reaching the real person underneath
Yeah.
ourselves, And there's something you wrote on page 35. You wrote, you were talking about Emma, and you said, as her therapist, I must not confuse Emma's defenses with who she is, for who lies beneath. And this is obviously something I have been thinking about for a long time. I've made videos just talking in circles about it. But from your experience, what would you say the qualitative indicators of knowing that you are in touch with that thing that lies underneath?
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you experience it? And then from a therapist perspective, when you're interacting, what gives you that sense?
It's there's a couple ways.
Mhm.
I could go into all the clinical indicators and all of this, but I'm going to first answer kind of a more,
Yeah.
I almost always get chills. So one part of me, it's usually my arms, my hairs will just start to stand on end. And then depending on the depth of connection to self, it will just spread like up my spine. And it's one of the most glorious. Sometimes it's so extreme. I have to, you know, how you do like the shudder, right? Sometimes it's so extreme. I have that. And it's just one of my favorite experiences. And sometimes I'll get it right before self is about to emerge, because apparently some part is clued into the fact that it's, you know, coming up. That's one of the cooler ways. Another way is I just have this sense of reverence. Like I have this sense of I'm really in the presence of someone very powerful, and almost like a bowing kind of feeling, and not in a less than way, but just in like a respect giving space to, exactly. And it really is a feeling.
Yeah.
It really is a feeling. And I think if you're not tuned into that, it gets very difficult. But those are the visceral ways that I can tell if I'm not using my brain at all. And it's just simply meeting somebody in my physiology.
I love that. That to me sounds like awe, you know.
Oh, that's such a good word. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, there is an awe.
And
you're really in the presence of something. You know, I don't know if you have a spiritual life, but sometimes I like to refer to it like you're just in the presence of God energy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of, and if you think about it, you know, all the defenses stripped down, just having whatever that sort of first component or the seed component, whatever it is that lies underneath all that, just having that in presence really is a thing of beauty. And I think that's what beauty is sort of referring to as well. I think all these words go together, the beauty and the awe and the reverence.
Absolutely.
And that what you were describing with the chills is lovely. I experienced that too. And there's something about a feeling that goes up my back as well that I have that I only first became consciously alive to in my own therapy was that feeling. And I get that now as well.
Like you've unlocked it to kind of happen more often.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
beautiful.
incredible. Yeah. And it's amazing to think how many years I went without it. You know,
yeah. What's the feeling? How would you describe the up the back feeling?
It's similar to like hairs standing up on end, but it's got a it's a little tingly. It's got emotion to it. It's like an excited energy.
Oh wow.
And also expansive. It sort of expands like it's expansive. But it's tied to what you're saying. There's a vitality. There's something about it where I feel like I'm in touch with something that's truly alive, as opposed to sort of concealed or manufactured or performed.
Or deadened or beautiful.
Yeah. And it really is such a gift. It's such a gift. Yeah, that's beautiful. So another way that I think about it too is spontaneity, having a sense, and I guess it depends on a person's presentation, but having a sense that you're interacting with someone who feels just more spontaneous.
Absolutely. Like authentic and creative spontaneity. Yes. Because
beautiful.
right, certain defenses can look spontaneous too, but you can feel the difference. Yeah.
You can. Okay, beautiful. I had this question around vagueness in relation to closeness. So I know vagueness is a defense. I understand that and working with it. But when you wrote about what did you write exactly? Well, essentially that vagueness is a defense against specificity, right? And that specificity would lead to closeness, right? So it would trigger feelings about closeness. I'm just wondering, in your experience, is that sort of the only way you see vagueness operating? Is that it defends against, well, it defends against closeness, but is it because if I am specific, then you know something about me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, but also in addition to a defense against closeness, it is interrelationally, it is a defense against closeness intrarelationally.
Yeah, right.
So there is very much a within me. So if I tell you, I had a breakup with my ex-boyfriend, that's very different than if I say I have a breakup with my ex-boyfriend, Devin.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
even as I knew I was about to give you this example, it's like, can I say that name? Which name? Oh my gosh. All this new stuff came up in my body, especially like a little heat wave. And that's between me and me. It's also between you and me. And it's also between, me and the listeners. So yeah, it just opens you up and opens you up internally. So yes, it's
yeah. So it's like it's this inner negotiation that goes on that you can feel. Like a lot of the time we can hear ourselves doing it internally as
yes, I think so.
Someone. And then I understand. So there's the vagueness, I guess tactically, but then there is the internal vagueness as well.
Yep, the vagueness that comes, actually more of a part of avoidance or denial or minimization, right? So vagueness can be part of a major defensive system and not just a tactical one. Yeah, absolutely.
You wrote a lot about the defense of pleasing.
Yes.
And how that's also related to sort of self-dismissal.
Yes.
I can relate to a lot of that. That's very similar to my defensive structure. Actually, a lot of what you wrote about, I saw a lot of parallels.
Is that the story that's resonating most with you personally so far?
Yeah. You said on one of the pages, page 65, I invited him to dismiss me and didn't even realize it. He accepted the invitation. What's worse, I was proud of how much I didn't need him. I was easy. Easy meant desirable. That's one of my favorite lines out of the whole book so far. Haven't read the whole book. Probably because I can relate to it so much. But there's also something in there that I haven't really heard talked about a lot, which is this bit about I was proud of how much I didn't need him, right? And I see that so often as well with clients. How do you make sense of pride there, right? Is that like a secondary, like a defensive affect? Is it an intellectualization in a story we tell ourselves? Is it the relief from anxiety? How would you make sense of the pride in that sentence?
Yeah, in that case, of course, the pride is a marker of a completely syntonic defense, meaning I know you know this, but I'll just say it anyway, meaning we are so identified with it. Pride is one of the key markers of it. And you could call it a lot of things. You could call it a defensive affect in the sense that it is a feeling that emerges, though, due to some kind of defensive structure. Right. And therefore, it is also an anxiety reducer. So based on, a narrative I was creating for myself that I had no reason to doubt at that point. So it's really everything you just said put together.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. It's like it's cementing all those things together. It's the word that sort of cements that whole experience. And I'm proud of it. Yeah, because there is a felt sense to it, but I suspect that is more like a relief from anxiety because look, I've got a nice concrete story to tell myself.
Oh, and it's a great story.
Yeah, how good I am.
So easy.
Yeah.
am like so much better than those difficult girls.
Yes.
Look, and it's got a superiority element to it.
Yep. Yeah.
And who doesn't want to feel superior?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, there's a toxic deliciousness
Yes.
and then pride about that.
Oh, I like that. A toxic deliciousness.
Yeah, not good.
No,
to put it
what a
bluntly.
delicious sentence. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't like to boil things down to gender differences because I think sometimes we do that when there really isn't one. But I do think that pleasing is quite lopsided to women.
Agreed.
So it's part of our currency, and it's also one of these defenses that we really should keep close by
Mhm.
and use even as healthy,
Yes.
more actualized individuals. So it's a really easy one to fall back into
Mm,
because of those elements.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think that's probably true of a lot of defenses, right? Is
Definitely.
that it's really about making these things conscious and that you really feel you're choosing them and you know from what place you're choosing how you're acting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't talk enough also, I think, about the fact that
Mm.
there's only a couple defenses that are truly never called for.
Yeah.
So many defenses need to be in our Rolodex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Which defenses did you mean when you say the ones that are never called for?
Well, I think big people, again, unless you are in survival mode as a child, right,
Mhm.
which is different, right? But projective identification,
Yeah.
projection. I mean, most of the primitive defenses, self-harm, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, big S splitting, big D denial, big P projection, projective identification. Yeah, self-harm. I'm trying to think of any others.
This reminds me too, as you're listing defenses off your Instagram, which I just wanted to mention, because that's actually how I first came across you. And that was,
That's so funny.
yeah, possibly even, it would have been, I would have found ISTDP at that point, but my very, like, right at the start. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish someone would just break down one defense at a time and nice, clear detail, give an example. And
Yes.
there you were.
I'm so glad to hear it. I haven't been posting as much recently because I've been focusing on trainings and books. But,
Oh, yeah,
when
you've
I
been
hear
hard
that,
at
I'm
work.
like, maybe I should go start posting again because
I loved it as an educational resource. It was so helpful. It was exactly what I was looking for.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I guess the library is there always, right? Even if I stop posting, the
Yeah.
library exists. So that's good.
Yeah, but even just taking all of those and making all of those into a book, like just as a reference book, I just think,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
So many ideas.
Because I imagine too, at least it's this way for me. When I'm synthesizing information, the end product looks so sort of simple, but it's a lot of work to make it
Yes.
that concise and have that flow and so yeah, I think if you've put so much work into it, turning it into a book would make great sense because I think it's so helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It makes me think of the amount of work that goes into taking just like you said, complex things and boiling them down into simple things.
Mm,
The ego, what's the word I'm looking for? Negotiations
mhm.
about no, don't use that big fancy word that you think makes you look smart. Don't do that. It actually does the opposite because ideally we're learning how to say things in a way that everyone can understand, getting off out of our down from our platforms. And why wouldn't we make it easy to pass on this information? So that's also another element that I'm grateful to for Instagram. Amazingly, is that it really forced me to try to boil it down. I also resented that greatly because
Yeah.
a lot of things I do not cover because they cannot be boiled down and I refuse to try.
Yes.
So it's a real back and forth for me.
Yeah, that I can see that in your book as well. I can see that you're very gifted at being able to speak in a way that translates these concepts just into and
Oh, thank you.
I know as therapists we should be getting good at that because that's part of
Yeah.
what we're doing. But that can be a real bridge to walk, especially when we are talking to colleagues or we're talking in supervision. in a particular way, in a particular language, and then we go into the therapy room. And so I'm always curious about the different ways that people are translating these concepts to their clients.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's so many underlined passages I have from your book that I just am purely taking inspiration about how to speak to clients about things.
Yeah.
And I really value that. I think more of that as well is needed. Like you said, the sort of translation of these concepts into something that makes sense to people
Yeah.
that are not psychologists, are not even psychologists, trying to explain what we're doing in ISTDP to people that don't do ISTDP can be quite tricky as well.
I completely agree. Yeah, we need to figure out how to translate to other therapists, and we need to figure out how to translate to our clients and beyond, because otherwise we're just going to, stay in this small little siloed off area, and we need to
I agree.
we need to help people. Yeah.
I agree, because there's so much that's wildly different about ISTDP to the other schools of therapy.
So different.
So different. Yeah.
Yeah, this book I'm working on now, it won't be like an ISTDP book. It will be a conscious therapeutic alliance book. And so I'm working on like, okay, how does this apply to CBT and IFS and DBT? And it's like,
yeah,
okay, they call this and they call it's, but it's amazing to try to do. It's a fun exercise, actually.
I'm just thinking of all the tables you can make. I love a good table.
Oh, I love a good table. If you ever come up with a good table, pass it along.
Right, I will.
I love that.
I love that too. I love taking them all and putting, table can convey so much information just in one little snapshot.
Agreed.
You also spoke about blame versus causality. There was a whole sort of page where you broke that down. I just wanted to spend a minute talking about it, because I do think it's something that people come up against a lot with clients.
Very common.
The idea of I don't want to blame. And so the way you broke it down was really nice in the book. I just wondered if, you wanted to speak to how what you do with someone in the room. It sort of brings up
Absolutely.
What's the point in blaming?
Yeah. If they say, what's the point in blaming? I'll say absolutely nothing. There's no point in blaming. Glad we're on the same page, right? Blaming is saying everything I do is because of you, and that would just be a lie. But we do have to obviously acknowledge that A can lead to B can lead to C, and that's just simple causality. So we must understand causality and separate that from responsibility to change. And it's also a very different mindset, right? Blame puts us into a helpless place. Blame puts us into a victim place. And it puts us into an oversimplified place, right? It's kind of almost a version of little s splitting, right? Where it's just anger with the blame, and it means that we're totally leaving out. Well, then if your mom's to blame, who's to blame for your mom? Oh, your grandma. Well, then, and now we're off to the races, and we're missing the complexity of what it means to be human. And so I just say, but we have to, recognize that if I'm late to a session, I caused your anger. I didn't cause your reaction to it, but I caused your anger. And we have to recognize just facts that A can lead to B can lead to C.
Yeah, no, I like that. I also, what was really useful there at the end was the way that you, as we often do in ISTDP, split apart the feeling from the action as well, like from the reaction. I think it's the key component here, because
it is amazing to me how A, this is not common knowledge, and B, even other therapies don't focus on this. And it is a game changer. Like, if there are a few facts, I don't know if you've had this experience, there are a few facts I can share with people where I see light bulbs go off. I see hope go up. I see relief happen. It is in sharing that fact that you agree. Feelings are not actions. Just like I could be sitting here angry, I could be sitting here hungry. Doesn't mean I have to eat. I have to go to the bathroom. Doesn't mean I'll get up and go now. Yeah, it's liberating.
And anger in particular.
Anger in particular.
Of it.
And sexual feelings.
And sexual feelings.
Those two are the two. Yeah.
I agree.
That's the feeling.
So, and why are they different to the other feelings? And there's this sort of false False. I guess there is this faux attempt that we can now talk about emotions. They're all good, none of them are bad. And yet the way that anger is talked about in particular, it's still very
Yes.
obvious that actually that's sort of the exception.
That's the bad one.
Even with
Yep.
my
Sexual feelings, anger. Bad, bad, bad.
yeah, and I guess
Yep.
the anger probably comes up more than the sexual feelings for me right now because I'm thinking about I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm just thinking a lot about the books that we're reading about feelings, and they obviously don't mention sexual feelings at all.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they should,
Right.
but yeah, but they're just probably not.
I'm not at that age.
But they talk about all these, now feelings are great and we should all be open to our feelings. But anger still gets a bad rap in so many of these books, and just a way
Really?
yeah, but it's subtle. Like, what was I listening to? I was listening to something with them last night, and they were talking about it's okay to feel angry, but when you feel angry, you should go away and be by yourself. And
Oh, oh my
no, and
God.
take a few deep breaths because you don't want the angry feeling to get out. Like, maybe like
Oh,
words weren't as severe, but that's essentially the message.
yeah.
And they
Oh
say it with
gosh.
this loving voice, like, listen to me, teaching you about how feelings are good, but you
Oh
can manage
gosh.
them. And I'm just like, I'm going, no, don't listen to that. So anger gets a bad rap. But also the separation out of the impulse from the, oh, sorry, not the impulse, that's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
that
The
also,
action
there's
from
even an
the,
impulse,
yeah,
the action and the feeling.
exactly.
The other thing that there's a lot of in, I guess, children's emotional literacy resources currently is the idea that no one causes your feelings. You can't say that someone causes your feelings. Like no one makes you feel something. And so I really liked what you just said there because I find that so confusing. I'm sitting there thinking, boy, so then what are we saying to people? I don't because so I couldn't, but I think you just really nicely clarified that for me when we were talking about blame and responsibility. And yes, there's a stimulus.
There's a stimulus and it
It's
was
usually
you.
relational,
Yeah,
not
right.
often the
Right.
wall.
Right.
And so, yes, a person can elicit a feeling inside you, but that's not I think what they're trying to say is that no one forces you to act in a certain way, right?
And yes, I think not only that, but what they're also revealing that they have fundamental confusion about what a feeling is, right? Because, when Aspasia said she liked my book, that made me think that I am the most important person in the world. I feel like the most important person. Okay, then we can say, no, your comment didn't make me feel that way,
Yeah, thought,
right?
yeah.
And they don't realize that actually that's not a feeling, la, 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 it's a thought, it's a grandiosity. And so I think it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about emotions,
Yeah,
in addition to what you said.
yeah, I agree.
So yeah, it's really problematic.
It's further heightened, I think, in recent times by this change in our language that every thought now starts with "I feel like."
Aha.
Every thought. Whereas, see, I don't remember that. I think that's been sort of the last maybe 10 years that
I
started.
agree with you. They coach us to do that.
Yeah.
Proper communication is to start every sentence with I feel rather than an accusation, and it causes problems.
Oh,
I
is
agree.
that where it came
I
from?
think so. Yeah. It's like instead of
Oh,
saying you la la la, you
it's
make it an
supposed to
I
soften the
statement.
blow, is it?
Yeah. And you make it about you and not the person, but it gets a little dicey.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Because I was wondering, why are people becoming even more confused as time passes between the distinction of feelings versus
I
thoughts?
think that's
And
one of
there's,
the reasons.
yeah. I noticed it
Yeah.
for the Kardashians. I just remember,
Oh, really? Really?
I remember seeing them. Everything was, I feel like, and I'm like, oh. My sense as well, though, is that there might be something about the fact that it makes the sentence longer and it gives this impression that you're maybe more intelligent is what I'm trying to say. Like it gives an impression that
Oh,
you're really in touch with something and look how much I have to say about it. There's that
that could
kind of,
be.
yeah.
That could be. Yeah, I also imagine that since we've been taught your feelings are your feelings and they're not wrong, that
Mm,
if you start a sentence with I feel, you can't argue, this is how I feel.
right.
And it's a tricky
That's right.
kind of thing. And if we can just tease apart what's really a feeling what's really your responsibility and what's not, what's a stimulus and what isn't, that this would get cleared away. And it's not actually that complicated.
No. And yet other therapies, I agree with you, other therapies get caught up in the confusion as well.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
And the impulse. I just think the impulse is probably for me the other revolutionary aspect of what happens for clients and ISTDPs, to learn that there is such a thing as an action impulse, and that you can just experience it without having to do anything. That seems to be, and again with anger, sexual feelings.
Yep.
Yeah, but with anger in particular, that there would be an impulse. It's almost like anger is the one that doesn't have an impulse.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's true. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's curious to me that that has somehow been skipped over by all the other therapies. So many, there are so many expressions and ways that you've used language in the book that are just beautiful. And I love the way that you talked about my body was learning how to feel in connection with another person in a way where no one would have to get hurt. It's just it's so resonant. It's so resonant, and captures something in such a simple way that can, for some reason, feel so difficult to explain with words. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thankfully I got good guidance. Make sure a 12-year-old can understand it was kind of my rule of thumb throughout the whole thing.
Oh, I love it.
So yeah. So I mean, I probably didn't pull it off the whole time, but I certainly did my best.
Well, I think you did a pretty good job, especially considering the topic, and that for a 12-year-old to be able to understand this stuff.
I don't know why I picked that age, but that was
Let's go with
not
it.
even thinking that it's probably part of the reason is because when we are learning 2 + 2, there's no emotional content, there's no anxiety and defense to get in the way of our learning. But if we're learning anger and love and impulse, all these things, our IQ is going to go down.
Yes.
Right, because we have anxiety and defense operating, keeping knowledge out of our mind. So maybe I think keeping it at this very low age, of just like, if I keep it to what a 12-year-old might be able to understand, more is likely to get through.
Yes.
I also get very angry at books that are written, and I will call out a lot of psychoanalytic texts that are so laborious to read. I resent it. And
Dry.
I just want my reader to feel stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because that's how I feel a lot when I'm reading psychoanalytic texts. It's like, why can't I understand this? And I'm like, it's because of this sentence, not necessarily because of my brain. So yeah.
And oftentimes too, it's just the use of big fancy words for no real reason, and they don't define them as well. And so there's the amount of times I'm underlining words, and I feel the same way.
Yeah.
There is I've been curious too for a while about the implications of ISTDP on parenting, and sort of from my experience anyway, it's a lack of, I can't really see anyone who's doing a lot with that in terms of where are the parenting resources from an ISTDP perspective. How should we be talking about emotions with our very young children from an ISTDP perspective? Because there's a lot of that out there, obviously. But I'm already critiquing it, as you can hear, thinking, what? That's not right. I'm sure there's people out there that are doing that, but thinking about how you would work with a very young child in some sort of therapeutic context, or even just giving parenting advice around what we're trying to teach about emotion to children. I mean, I'm just throwing that out of left field. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I do. You're right. To my knowledge, there's I cannot think of one person who has like full ISTDP training and is teaching on the matter or writing books or anything like that. Sometimes I wonder, when I think about all the parenting stuff that's out there, right? And like right now, the gentle parenting wave and all that kind of stuff. I sit there and I wonder if whatever we think the next way to be is just going to create the next issue that generation is struggling with. And that there's just, there's like a better way to do it, but there's not a perfect way to do it. Right? Like,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I just think some nice general principles would be helpful. But actually, the trick is trying to teach people to be able to be flexible and
Yes.
meet each moment and each interaction, and giving people the confidence that they can determine that. You don't need to go to Instagram and look up what was I supposed to do.
No, because that post doesn't know your kid,
No.
doesn't know you, doesn't know anything.
No.
Right? Like there are times you need to yell at
Yes,
your children.
that's correct.
Like,
Thank you.
there
Thank you,
are.
Michelle. I feel better now. Yes.
Like there just are, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, I think it's just such a maddening topic.
Yeah.
Because people come in thinking they're sharing the way.
Yeah.
And no one wants to say, this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can make my best a little better with some information, but like,
Yeah.
you
That's-
know,
I just think the ideal is not even attainable. Like what it would require of
doesn't exist.
being. Yeah.
It doesn't exist because you have a child with needs you cannot fulfill.
That's right.
You can't. You can fulfill a certain percentage of them at different times, but like it is an impossible problem. And you can just do the best you can and make honest repairs. And as a parent, work on yourself. This is one of the reasons I do not see people under 18 years old, is because, you know, I would want to get the parents in. Every single time I would say, if I'm going to see this child, the parents have to be in individual therapy.
Yes.
You know, it's just so rarely the child, and the child is more a symptom of something that's not working either in a marriage or in an individual or something like that.
Yes.
Or it's just simply some biological element that's different about the child, and no one really can fix it, even if they worked on themselves. And it's just something that has to be either waited out, or my whole point is it's just such a difficult, mysterious, difficult topic. And we must approach it with utter humility.
I agree 1,000%.
Every time.
I mean, what I tell myself, and perhaps as a story, is that actually in my imperfect parenting, I'm letting a bit of noise into the system. You know, maybe that's the whole point. Maybe it's a form of, because I've talked about this before with someone else, that even if you could do some sort of ideal, you could press a button and you could make it ideal, you're parenting at home. The world's not like that. And I do think there is an element of trying to set up a person for navigating the reality of the world that they're going to enter into. And obviously, that's not the same thing as saying it's okay to just not care about your parenting whatsoever. But I just think that is part of the grind is what I was going to say, of relationships.
Yes.
And, you know,
and it is a grind sometimes. It's definitely a grind in parenting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It is the hardest thing I have ever done by far, and continues to be. And every time they get a little bit older, I'm like, oh, but things are a bit settled now. And then here comes the new wave of challenges I never expected.
The next issue, yeah.
All the thing, and it's always the aspects I never anticipated would be, you know, there are some that I'm like, oh, I think that might be difficult, but it's not. Oh, actually, I find when they're bickering with each other, I find that incredibly difficult. And I didn't really expect that for some reason. I always used to watch that and other people, oh, it's okay, you just do X, Y, and Z.
But something hits you more when it's you. Yeah.
Exactly. Because of me.
So, and we can't predict that stuff. We cannot predict it.
And I think that's actually just what I've learned. It's the principle of, you know, if I'm open to it, then this, you know, this whole parenting adventure is showing me more and more too about myself, history, what I'm capable of, and how I can change through the process. And so, yeah, it's never ending.
Yeah, but you're right. We don't have a lot of ISTDP and parenting stuff.
We don't.
But do we need it? Do we need it? I don't know.
No, but I think there's so much focus in my circles anyway on emotion coaching with kids now, and it's in the schools here, and yeah, and that's great. But they have all these programs, and the part that irritates me is just that you're just missing a few bits there. You know, like
a few key bits too.
Yeah, I can see the intention's good, but you're not talking about the impulse at all. And you're
Yeah,
also
you're like, why didn't you hire me to design these programs?
Oh,
Yeah.
and you're still like you're talking about how there's feelings and then actions, but then you move on to say this thing over here where you're confusing a feeling with an action. You're just contradicting yourself. Like
Ah!
it's
Yeah.
just those maddening details. So I think there are some general principles around how ISTDP understands emotions that you can
Yeah.
bring into it. I don't think that we need to start talking about, projective identification and
Yeah.
like,
That's going to give them their whole other set of issues.
that's right. That's right. Okay. But that's another idea for you, Michelle, if you want to
I
write
will not step
yourself.
into it. If I step into it, you'll have to come here and make sure I'm okay because I'm not okay if I even try that.
I'll remember that. That'll be
That's my
call for
SOS.
help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, briefly on shame.
Yes.
Uh, because I guess it's the way that I've been taught ISTDP and also has actually worked out and ended up making the most sense in the way that I've worked with clients thus far, is that I see shame mostly as self-attacking, sort of anger turned inwards. But my sense is that there's schools of thought that shame is really a primary affect and that it doesn't get enough attention in
Right.
ISTDP. And then I think about what I was doing before ISTDP, and I was going down the path of lots of different trauma therapies, and obviously shame is quite big in some of
Yeah.
those areas. I'm just curious where your thinking is on shame and how you work with it, and what
Yeah.
are the instances where you do interact with it like it is something primary,
Yeah.
whatever.
I have a very
Mm.
humble relationship to shame right now. And I really mean like right now. I feel like I'm kind of in a growing, learning place with shame.
Mm.
And so I currently have a couple of categories. One is, yeah, shame as a genuine primary affect, even according to how ISTDP would put it, where, but you would have to have done something unbelievably egregious
Right.
to really have healthy shame. And that healthy shame would have to come with an impulse to do something about it.
Which would be like a type of repair, you mean?
Yeah, like a repair or,
Like a
or just something bigger,
like a
even
societal repair as opposed to like a one-off.
potentially. Exactly.
What you mean? Yeah.
Potentially.
Okay.
Yep. But I think that is very, very rare. And I think the most common thing I see is shame as a defense. Like you said, it's a result of repression, it's a result of self-attack, anger turned inward. But there is this other category of shame.
Mm.
And this is where the kind of humble learning relationship comes in, where it doesn't seem to be about self-attack and anger getting shunted inward, and more about an activation of a very, very young trauma where there was just such before concept of self.
Like pre-verbal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where, and again, this is where the humble comes in because I'm not even quite sure how to word it yet. I'm still kind of learning and experimenting and asking people way smarter than me about what they think. But that it is something different and needs to be treated different than defense or healthy feeling, that there's something else going on where instead it's something that needs to be witnessed and kind of allowing that shame to exist with a compassionate other and a healthy connection, and explored more openly rather than shut down, like as if it was a defense mechanism.
Like it's wise, like it has something to
There's something for us in it. Exactly right. There's a wisdom somewhere in there. So that's kind of my current relationship to shame. But I will say, I would put like, I'm making these numbers up, but I would put like 1% shame as genuine feeling at bottom of the triangle, 80% shame as defense, self-attack, and then the 19%, that other kind of still learning, kind of more mysterious place. And almost 20% is actually a pretty high percentage. So again,
So
making those numbers up.
Yeah.
But
No, that's interesting. So
yeah,
you're linking that mysterious category, I think, to like very, very young trauma, like talking about
exactly.
pre-verbal trauma.
Exactly.
Um, and is that something that you think would come about sort of in later stages of therapy, or not necessarily? Like that might be part of what you're dealing with.
Interestingly enough, I've seen it do both.
Okay.
I've seen it only appear once we got through relational layers,
What I was
and I
thinking.
have seen it just be the thing that is just there, and it's right there for us to see.
Wow.
So I've seen it kind of at every stage of treatment.
In a roundabout way, it almost sounds like it doesn't, you can sense that this thing doesn't actually feel defensive. It feels like
Correct.
it's its own entity in its own right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it actually wants to be taken seriously.
Correct. And
Yeah.
if you try to take it away, it's like ripping someone's skin off
Yeah.
as opposed to their shirt.
Yeah. There's something so interesting too about like the way that we would deal with shame, the sort of shutting it down, is that we shame. Yeah. It's like
Yes. We can fall into that trap.
there is something missing, I think, from ISTDP as it stands in terms of trauma. So some types of trauma has been my sense, and I know it's been a lot of people's sense. And I suspect that that's related to what we're talking about with shame here. It's something to do with this very early set of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, the integrative format has just been game changing because
And who's leading that?
Alan is really mostly the one leading it. It's a little bit in his book, Reaching Through Resistance,
Oh, right.
in the final chapter, I believe, chapter 17. But even in his book, it's not as explicit and fleshed out as he now is in his fragile rounds that he does every month.
Got it. So that's part of the fragile rounds. Okay.
Exactly. It's part of the fragile rounds. And that's where I learned it. And it's different than the graded format. And what I think is that it helps a lot with those trauma, more severe and earlier trauma people. There's still gaps, right? For sure. But I think if we get more educated on the integrative formats, we see the gaps are not as big as we thought they were, but there are big gaps that call for different things and, go to different levels and even different dimensions that, are a whole nother story. So
Yeah.
yeah, whole nother cosmic story. So
Talk about
yeah,
that in our next one though. I'd like to talk about that.
sure.
I'm conscious of time, so I
Yeah.
do want to just ask you about breath work. I know it's something that you offer now.
Yes.
How and why? How did you find your way to breath work? And how do you, well, maybe it doesn't, but I was going to ask, how do you find it works with ISTDP? I don't know if you see them as separate, they go together.
No,
Mm.
this is so cool. This is just so cool. So I discovered breath work about a year ago, uh, at a psilocybin retreat in the Netherlands. And I'm laughing because they were saying that retreat leaders were like, oh, yeah, during your free day, we're going to offer optional somatic breath work. And I was like, I roll. Like, so dumb. I don't need to do that. Maybe that's what I'll skip and I'll just have some nice alone time because breathing is dumb.
And yet we pay so much attention to it in ISTDP. It's so
It's totally true.
I know, because
Yeah,
I've often thought about why the breath seems important in some
very
specific
important.
way, and yet we abandon it otherwise.
Yep. So so I am now on the breath train. But so I decided, some voice in me was like, just do the breath work. And I think it's because the woman facilitating it was like, it's not what you think. And so I did it, and I had full blown breakthroughs, um, deep access to things that would either take psilocybin or intensive therapy. It blew my mind. And as soon as it was over, I was like, I will learn this. I must integrate this. It's no question. Like,
Wow.
yeah. And so I did. Well, I was also still a little skeptical because I was like, well, maybe it's just because I'm on a mushrooms retreat and,
Yeah.
and this is actually not that powerful. And then I did it a couple months later online with the same facilitator, just as powerful.
Wow.
I was like, okay, now I'm like, this is the real deal. And so so I got training, I got certified. So I'm a certified somatic breathwork practitioner. And you know, it's not psychotherapy, so I can do it with my dad and I can do it with, you know, my husband, which is so cool.
Oh, the freedom.
The freedom. Yes, exactly. But
Wow.
it with certain patients,
Mm.
it is so beautifully integrated into their ISTDP work.
Mm.
Um, in some cases, it has been the thing that we needed to get unstuck.
Mm.
And just immediately leads to not only the deepest grief waves, rage waves, contact with true self. It is just sensational. And some people it's not quite right for several different reasons. But and it doesn't actually matter where they fall on the psychoneurotic or fragility spectrum.
Oh, wow.
Not that I've witnessed so far, but I know that I'm venturing into a new territory. No one's combined somatic breath work with ISTDP yet. So to me, it's just all data collection. But so far, I see no pattern with if breath work is better for highly resistant or fragile or repressive. That's not, it seems to defy those types of categories and seem to be about something else that I don't yet know or understand.
Yeah, because I was going to say, originally, do you think it's helping to clear out the pathway, like, but it's
Oh, it bypass.
yeah,
It's very easy to bypass anxiety and defense.
yeah,
Now, of course, somatic breath work will not help people see their defenses
mm,
and regulate their anxiety in real life, right?
yes, yes,
But it will help empty out the pressure
right,
that's in the jar where all the feelings are in there, or it might help them get a
mm,
glimpse of what's true in the same way psilocybin might.
yes, yes.
Um,
That experiential component that you can then build on as motivation.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly right. That's
Mm,
exactly right.
mm,
So it is absolutely just been mind-blowing to me. Um, I love doing it. It's 10 times easier than ISTDP. It's not hard to do.
nice.
Uh,
Nice. I
and it's
love
very
that.
powerful. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been curious about breathwork for a long
If
time.
you're interested, we could do something together
Love to.
because like there's no, it's not psychotherapy, so I can do it with anyone. So just let me know.
The freedom that I feel when you say that sentence, it's like, oh, like I can actually just do something, like it's such a different
Yes.
about the 10,000.
Yes. Yes.
Love that.
Yes. So yeah,
Uh,
just poke me.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
In a funny way, I remember when I first heard about breath work too. It was actually years and years ago now. A lady I was working with was learning breath work somewhere, and I remember doing the same thing, rolling my eyes, and just like, what? Oh, really? Like how ridiculous. But then I went to ISTDP and I actually started to take well, so much of the body systems and physiology more seriously. Um, and then I remember at one point thinking, like when like all this like paying attention to what kind of sigh is that and thinking about
Yes.
striated and then I remember thinking about breath work again, like, oh, well, why did I think that was so silly? Like look at us, paying attention to people sighing.
Yes.
That sounds
Yeah.
so crazy when I talk to other psychologists that don't use ISTDP, that we pay attention to sighing, that they just look at me like I'm a crazy person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So no, that makes good sense to me, breath work. And I imagine that there are lots of other I don't know if it's a modality, but there's lots of other techniques that may be similar to that. Like there's lots of other body
Yeah.
kind of um techniques that people use that I
Yeah.
probably used to eye roll, that I'm so much more open to now.
I
Just
know. Me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to
Yep.
phase in, like even to give someone like you say, it might lack the structure of the meaning making or the insight,
Yeah.
answers and anxiety, but to at least give some people a sense of what we're talking about, um,
Yes.
that builds their own desire for more of that, or that
Yep.
it's possible. Actually, that links to hope, which we didn't get to. But I think there's also a lack of focus on hope and ISD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I've been exposed to at least one person that I think spoke about it enough
Yeah.
that it like, but yeah, other people, not so much. And in a lot of the books, not so much,
Mm.
but it's everything.
It's everything. Of course it is. And that's
Everything.
part of what makes it so human. And I think sometimes with any kind of textbook, there maybe is a desire to make it a little drier and get rid of terms that lack a nice rigorous definition, or
Yeah.
ISTDP, well, definitely an ISTDP with all the tables and taxonomies.
Yes.
And so, maybe hope just kind of got edited out for that reason. But to me, that's sort of part of the whole why. And it's a signal too. I think it's related to a signal that you are you're following the momentum, or you're on the trajectory towards the healthy part of oneself.
Absolutely.
How else do you know? And I think all of these qualities, these felt senses of what it's like to be interacting with someone when they are undefended, knowing that you are making a decision from a place that is more authentic in that regard, hope, all of these sorts of, I guess, they're a felt sense that they're not, they're not easy to describe in words, and
Yeah.
maybe that there's a lot of differentiation between people about how they feel them. But we need to be able to talk about them and include them in the mix, because I think
Yeah.
otherwise they get lost, and then
Yeah.
that probably gives rise to people learning ISTDP in quite a robotic fashion.
Yes.
You strip the human heart out of it. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I'm sad
Oh,
to have to
this is
stop.
like such a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so
No,
glad.
I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite some time. And yeah, the work you did with the journal was awesome. And that's kind of when I think that's when I can't remember if I saw you popping up on my Instagram, because you'd say nice things.
Oh
And that,
yeah,
or I was
followed
like,
you
I
on
like this person.
I followed you on Instagram for a long time.
Always love a compliment. Yeah. And or it was the journal. I think it was the journal. That's where your name started to become recognizable to me.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your seat has got the Greek key design, the meandros. And that's like a symbol that my dad is around. Yeah.
This tells you your father's nearby.
Yeah,
Oh
his
my
love, his love.
Wow. I can't believe this is just wild to me.
I noticed it right at the start.
Yeah. This is not fabric I normally would have picked.
Are you serious?
And oh
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I've had this has been like my therapy chair since like 2014.
wow.
And I still sometimes I'm like, it's very strange I picked this. But
So you knew that at some point in 2025 you would be speaking to
it
me.
would be needed right now.
That's right.
And now
That's
I'm like,
so
I get
awesome.
it.
That is the complexity of the universe at play.
That's
Yeah.
right. Oh, we didn't talk about that either. Complexity
Oh
versus
yeah, I have a whole
I
thing.
got a whole thing on that too.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
No, we got lots to talk about.
This has been fun. Next time I'm going to allow 2.5 hours. So if you're down,
Perfect.
3 hours, if you're down for that.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
This is so lovely.
So
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.